All right, we edge ever closer to 2000 elo. Only, what is that, 36 away? And that's like, what, 4 or 5 wins if we can keep the streak going anyway. I say keep the streak going. We've had a few stumbling blocks recently, but we have a Caro, and we'll see what my opponent goes for. In the last episode, we were on the white side of a Caro Kann and played the Panov Attack, which is my recommendation against the Caro. I think it's the most testing line for black to face. There is the advanced variation, which is also very strong, but I think that more Caro players are familiar with the advanced variation as opposed to the Panov attack. But my opponent plays the exchange. Maybe he will go for the Panov with c4, or go for the more traditional bishop to d3. And I've actually been studying these positions recently after knight c6, pawn c3, and queen to c7, which is a line that I learned from international master Alex Banzea, which I'm sure many of you know of, and many of you watch as well, because he's a great content creator and a very good teacher, so I would highly recommend him. And the line that he teaches in this position, which I think he got from Grandmaster David Howell, is pawn to g6, as opposed to a more typical pawn e5 or knight to f6 sort of plan. And pawn g6 is fascinating, because the entire point is to play bishop to f5 and exchange the light squared bishops, and have the g-pawn come to f5. Now, knight to e2, I think in this position is not a problem. I think knight to f3 is slightly worse. I think knight e2 is a better choice. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think there's a reason not to play bishop to f5. I think when knight e2 is interesting is in this position. And then there's some interesting lines from there. I think it's something like bishop to g4, pawn f3, bishop d7. I think that's the line. But in this position, I think we can go for bishop to f5. Hopefully I remember what I am Banzea was on about, which I assume I'm pronouncing correctly. And so the point is to exchange the light squared bishops and to take with the g-pawn. But my opponent goes knight to f4, threatening the d5 pawn. So if we take on d3, I assume he will take on d5. But then we can go queen to d6, attacking the knight, and if you take, then I can take, and I'm up a piece. So there's no reason we can't take the bishop. Play something like take, pawn e6. And then, I mean, we trade off the light squared bishops, put all the pawns on light squares. That can't be a bad thing. We also potentially have knight to b4, I think. Let's go for it. Bishop d3. He may take with the knight, rather than the queen. He may choose to do that. But queen takes seems more natural. Knight to b4 is interesting, because if you take, then I take. And also we're attacking the queen and threatening c2, but there seems to be just the simple queen to b5 check, and then we'll have to drop the knight back, and then we lose d5, and that looks no good. So we probably just have to defend d5 with pawn to e6. And this is a position I haven't seen before. Most people take the bishop on f5, and, you know, we take back with the g-pawn, and we have the open g-file. Our king's a little bit weak. I think a lot of the time we castle queenside in those lines. But I like this. I think bishop to d6 makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it's weird not to be putting the bishop on g7, and maybe this is an incorrect approach. We can also maintain the possibility of castling queenside, though. We're not obliged to castle kingside, even though that's normally how things go in the Caro Kann, particularly because we've weakened this diagonal. Okay, queen e3. So he's threatening the pawn on d5, because, of course, the pawn is pinned to the king. But we could take and trade the queens, and after take, I mean, knight to f6. We have a interesting position. White has the dark squared bishop, and we have all of our pawns on light squares, and we don't have a dark squared bishop to oppose him. We could play knight to e7. Well, knight g to e7. Delaying. But, I don't know, knight to d3. Yeah, well, knight to f5 is actually quite strong. So I think I like knight e7. Well, knight g to e7. And obviously, knight takes d5 no longer works because our knight is in the way, so the pawn can take back and there is no pin on the pawn. So it also accomplishes that, prepares knight to f5, defends d5 as well, which is useful, and is just a normal developing move. Queen e3 is an interesting move. I feel like queen f3 makes more sense. Okay, knight to d3. And I assumed that I could play knight to f5 in this position and win a tempo on the queen. And I don't know, this just looks like a very comfortable position to me. We have potential tactics on d4 in the future. By no means right now. Potentially nothing will happen at all on d4. But it's worth maintaining the idea of potential sacrifices on d4. And then, okay, we have to choose what we're going to do. We have to be very aware of white trying to play g4 to kick our knight away. Of course, for the time being, we're attacking his queen, so first he has to choose where he's going to put the queen. But most likely we'll follow up with pawn to h5, preventing pawn g4, because if something like take, we have like bishop h2, king h1, bishop g1, king g1, and queen to h2, checkmate. So it prevents g4 not just because we open up the h-file, but because we will force a checkmate. Which is a nice idea of playing bishop to g1 discovered check. There was a game that I played about a month ago where I, for some reason, completely blanked on that checkmating idea in exactly the same sort of structure, actually, which is why it's useful to analyze your games, because now it comes second nature because a commenter pointed it out, which thank you very much to whoever that was. And okay, I don't know, this looks interesting. And we still have the option to castle either side. So let's say, I don't know, queen g5 looks natural. Just trying to put pressure on our dark squares. Maybe queen to f6 can be played. If queen to g5, pawn to h5, queen to f6... Queen e2. This is, by the way, where tactics could be played. Not right now, but, you know, it comes with tempo on the queen, on, like, c2, and the knight could be weak, all those ideas. But, okay, pawn h5 looks necessary. I see no reason not to play it. This is a very common pawn structure in the Caro Kann in general, particularly in the exchange variation. Well, and the advance, actually. Okay, bishop to g5. White stops us from castling queenside. Okay. How are we going to continue? We need to come up with a plan. Because even if we do castle kingside... Well, if we castle kingside, then maybe g4 can be played. Yeah, maybe. So perhaps we need to leave our king in the center for the time being, which I'm not the biggest fan of. It's difficult to come up with a plan in this position. We could try and offer a bishop trade, which doesn't seem like the worst idea in the world. But then again, our bishop's quite strong because it's a dark squared bishop with all our pawns on, well, other than a7, but that's irrelevant, on light squares. We could consider pawn h4, so that g4 we can take en passant. That's interesting. And maybe we can even prepare rook to h5 to try and get rid of the bishop. And if queen to g4... I don't know, I quite like h4. I like it. It's an interesting move. And it's also typical when you have this knight on f5, because the knight supports h4. There's no e-pawn to kick the knight away. And there's also no light squared bishop to take the knight. And yeah, we prevent any g4 take and h takes action because we will just take en passant. Okay. If this and knight to f3... see. Trying to come up with some like sacrificing sort of idea, but I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything. Is rook h5 asking for trouble with knight to f4 in the future? Like rook h5, let's say queen g4. Rook h5, queen g4. Knight h6 can be played, probably forcing a trade. And then we can castle queenside and start a kingside attack. Alternatively, we could play for f6. And like, I don't know, f6, g5, g4. I'm going to go rook h5. It feels like a natural move to me. And I also don't want to drop too low on the clock. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, he goes for knight to f3. That move I wasn't so concerned about, because knight to f4 is difficult to play without the queen on g4 supporting the f4 square. So I wasn't too fussed about this. Alright then. How should we continue? He has a very good control over e5, it should be noted. We could play king f7, king g7. Sorry, king f8, king g7. That's interesting. Maybe even play for f6. I don't know. What pieces need improving? What pieces need improving? My rook is... Well, it can't really be much better. My knight is very good. My bishop looks pretty ideal. My queen... I mean, b2 is well protected. It doesn't really have any targets. And the queen should really be the last piece to get involved anyway. This knight... I mean, I'd love to get it to e4, but I don't see how I'd accomplish that. Maybe knight to a5, knight to c4 is interesting. Perhaps I'm just asking to be booted out, though. Obviously, this rook could do with being improved, but how? Maybe king f8 is a good way to start. Not too committal. Also, getting off the e-file so the e-pawn isn't pinned anymore. c4 may be a plan for white in the future. Worth bearing in mind. For the time being, I don't know, maybe like taken d5 is strong. So maybe I should go king f8. So that if here, I can just take it. Yeah, I'm going to go king f8. Partially a waiting move, a minor improving move, playing against c4. I can potentially expand on the queen side with b5 to exert more control over the c4 square. I have very good control over e5, which is nice. This bishop is strange. It's not the best placed piece in the world. We could play something like king g7, rook e8, f6, e5 even, and try to expand very aggressively in the center of the board. You know, go for e4 sort of ideas, aligning the rook with the queen. Okay, yeah, he goes bishop f6. I think that's a good move. Stopping king to g7. Okay. Also exerting more control over e5. Makes sense. How do we get the bishop out of there? I don't know. It's not that easy. We can get a knight d7, maybe. Like knight b8, knight d7, but... That does mean my queen will control c4 as well. Interesting. I don't really want to trade my dark squared bishop off. Don't really want to do that. because my bishop's quite strong. He's potentially threatening to put something on e5, but it doesn't come with that big an issue. Although if knight b8, knight e5, and knight d7, then he can trade and his bishop stays there. That's kind of annoying. Maybe I should go bishop to e7. Then maybe I can even play for g4, sorry, g5, g4. And like h3, that looks interesting. Yeah, I'm going to go for a bishop trade. Which also potentially makes this bishop f6 move kind of silly. Because he's just going to like trade it anyway. So he hasn't necessarily accomplished anything. Unless the trade is good for white. Which is hard to say. So okay. Bring the king to g7. Well, I mean, for the time being, the king is fine on f8, though. An interesting position. Yeah, and he does put a knight on e5, as kind of expected. Is g5, is it too early? He does have more control over g4 as well. So probably too early. Take. Maybe take and rook to g5? I don't know if that really accomplishes anything. Also, knight to f3 will always be played with tempo. So maybe not. We could try and get the knight on e4. That's interesting. So knight d6. Also stops queen b5, which is maybe useful. I might want to play a6 at some point. Should I just play it now, just to be safe? If c4, then he loses d4, so that's okay. He has no immediate threat. Let's go a6. Because queen b5 could be an annoying infiltration. I don't know, maybe a6 is too slow. But it's always a good move in terms of if you can just magic the pawn there without wasting a tempo, it's always going to be slightly a slight improvement. Whether I could have improved more significantly, though, is another question. Okay. Knight d6. Is there a reason not to play this? I don't see one. Also, blocking up the e-file will be good. Because if we can block up the e-file, it kind of nullifies the rook and the queen. Our queen's also protecting h4 now, so we can potentially swing the rook over and target f2 in conjunction with the knight. Maybe we can execute something like this. Okay, he takes. I expect, yeah, the other knight to go there. Rook c8 hangs a6. Oh, that's an interesting move, actually. Interesting. Because if I go for a move like queen c7, defending, knight g6, f g6, queen e6, knight e4, queen g6, rook g5, queen h6, king g8, queen h4, rook f8. Something like that. I feel like we have enough counterplay. c5 doesn't seem to make any sense. Rook c8, queen a6. If I move my knight, I lose my rook, and I don't really have enough counterplay. Maybe I should have taken the knight myself and kept the pawn back here where it was protecting a6. Maybe that was the way to go. Still. I could go queen e8. Keeping an eye on e6 and c6 and g6 and f7. Bit passive, but maybe that's a way to keep things together. Don't love it, but might be necessary. Preparing something like knight to e4, and if he plays f3, I can put the knight on g3, where it should be, you know, relatively strong. I think white's done a good job here, though, of creating a difficult position. I probably want to play king to g7 at some point to improve the king's positioning a bit. We're also low on time. a6, yeah, I really wish this pawn was back on b7. I definitely should have played knight takes, and then knight d6. 100% what I should have gone for to keep the pawn structure as it is. Yeah, definitely a bad move order for me. But, alright, we'll live with it. Maybe c5 can be played at some point in the future to challenge the d4 pawn. g4. What does that do? You're taking pressure off of a6. What's the threat? Maybe take, and take? King g7. Take. Yeah, I guess that's the idea. So I could play knight to f5, blocking the queen's scope. I could play knight to e4, blocking the rook's scope. If knight e4, pawn f3, knight f6, queen f4, king g7. H4 is very weak. Maybe coming back to f5 is the shout for the time being. Which also defends h4. I'm going to go for it. Pressure on d4, defends h4, blocks the queen's scope. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have brought the knight back to d6 in the first place, but, you know, we'll figure it out. Potentially rook c8, c5 is an idea. King g7 should probably be played at some point, as I've mentioned. Sorry, king g7 should be played at some point, as I've mentioned many times. Because it's just awkward on f8. It could do with supporting the g6 pawn, and controlling f6 is maybe useful. Although the queen has no good access to f6 for the time being, or the knight for that matter. But, you know, knight g4, knight f6 could be annoying in the future. Okay. Rook b8 could be a move soon, applying pressure on the b file. Or rook c8 followed by c5. King g7, double up. Is the threat take? Maybe. King g7. Well, I think I should play this no matter what. Rook a to e1. Also, b2 is now defended by the rook. Rook a to e1. Trying to make some f6 thing work with, like... No, that's silly. I'm just weakening myself way too much. Um, Rook c8, knight g6. Maybe I have to go rook h6 to defend the g6 pawn for the time being while I figure this position out. I could play knight h6 to attack the queen. Well, no, that would hang h4. Rook h6, knight f7, king f7, rook e6, queen e6, rook e6, king e6. That should be winning. Although tricky. Should be okay. I don't really have enough time to be calculating all of this. If he takes on g6, I can take with the rook, and everything is well defended. See if he gets greedy and takes on f7. I doubt it, though. If we get a bit more time, maybe we can go rook c8 and c5. The queen has no good way of attacking a6 to punish that. Knight c5, that's interesting. Well, knight d3 going to c5, I assume. But then, I mean, maybe it can sack itself on e6 from there. Hmm. Rook a7, knight c5. There's pressure here, though. So if here, take. I'm not calculating that right. That looks scary, though. How do I wriggle out of this? I think I need to start with a5 to ensure that this pawn isn't a target for the knight. I don't think knight sacrifices work on e6 properly. I don't think they work. Let's go rook a7. I don't think this is a problem. Because knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes. I mean, I could even play rook e7 there, actually. But probably easier is just queen f7. And the 7th rank is well defended. It's definitely awkward the way that my pieces are placed, though. My rook's playing like lateral defense, my queen defending everything. It's not ideal. I think he was threatening rook takes f5. So I need to be able to take back with the e-pawn without hanging my queen. Maybe I can try and get my queen in the game now. Although, then like take, if I move the queen, then the rook would hang. Maybe I need to bring my rook back to h5 to defend the knight. Now that there's there's less pressure on the light squares because the knight is no longer on e5. It's unclear how I'm gonna break out of this position, particularly with very little time on the clock. I think that my decision not to take on e5 and allow knight takes c6, pawn takes c6 was a big mistake. I think this transformation of the structure has really hurt my position. Really hurt my position, but we'll live with it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. The game is not over. We are definitely on the back foot, but one of the things in chess that you need to try to get better at me included, obviously, is trying to survive when under immense pressure and try to still play good moves. I think I want to play Queen D6, maybe. Rook H5 as well. Knight E6, Pawn E6, Rook E6, Rook E6, Rook E6. There is no threat. I think I can just play a move like Queen to D7, and I'm fine. So, just gotta always keep an eye on Knight E6. It's the Rook E6, though. Because of the alignment of my king and queen. So if Rook E6, Pawn E6, Rook E6... If Rook E6, then Knight E6, and I lose the queen. But I think I can just play Queen to E8, defending G6, although it's already defended, and asking the Rook what it's doing. Okay, threatening infiltrations. Probably have to stop that. Now if you take, I can take with the G-pawn, so my Rook doesn't hang. But I think I need to stop Queen A6. Could do with playing Rook H5. But not immediate. Wait, yeah, immediately. Because if take, I can just play take. Pressure on B2 as well, which is potentially useful. If knight to... Oh, maybe I can try and play queen to B5 to offer a queen trade. Okay, I don't think I have a choice, although I really don't like this transformation. Ooh, really? Really? Okay. Let's offer a queen trade. Oh, I think I might have blundered. I think I blundered. Queen B5, CB5, Rook D5. Oh no, the Rook is defended by the Knight. I'm bugging. The Rook's defended by the Knight. That's okay. I completely forgot about that. Oh, in all of these lines I was worried about. Oh no, because it involved taking the Knight, which meant the Knight no longer defended the Rook. Okay, whatever. I didn't mean to flip the board. Okay. We're surviving. I'm very intrigued by taking with the A-pawn, though. I thought he would take with the C-pawn, but then again, I suppose I can take on D4 there, though. And I don't think white has any tactics. So maybe pawn B4 was a mistake from white. But okay, let's say he plays queen back to G4. Let's say he brings the queen back. What do I do? And he does that. Rook H5? Looks natural. I don't really see another option. Maybe he can go for this, but I don't know. Take. Rook H6 looks very dubious. My queen's completely out of the game, though. I need to try and bring her into the game somehow. Or maybe via B8. Maybe I can swing her around. Still, though, I think that I have to generate counterplay. I can't just play fully defensive. Otherwise, I will get nothing. So I think I need to play a move like Queen C4. I mean, I couldn't do that here because of Rook takes, pawn takes, and there. Okay, Queen F3. What does that threaten? I don't know. Let's tie the queen down. There's no rook to E3 because my knight controls E3, which is very useful. Whoa. Oh, I don't know what to do now. I don't have any moves. This is a random move because I don't know what to play. And I'm going to run out of time. I don't think these tactics work. I'm just shuffling. I don't think I can do anything. I think I just have to shuffle. What do I play? Okay, let's... Oh, I blundered that. That's a blunder. Wait, no. The... Oh, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I think I have to go into this. And then attack the knight. So there's two pieces hanging. Rook here. I don't have enough, though, do I? My queen can't access this diagonal. There's no good way for her to do so. My knight can't move. I literally don't have moves. What do I play? I think this was a threat, so... I suppose white is a little bit stuck, but, like, I don't see how I... Sorry, b5 looks strong. b5 looks very strong. I probably have to try c5 in that position. b6. Take. b7, I can play take. Okay, we're surviving just. And we do have pressure on a lot of the white position, but doesn't feel like enough. And I'm down 2 pawns, let's not forget. I wish I had more time, because it was a very rich position, and I completely missed the tactic. There was always going to be a tactic, though, particularly with such low time, but at least we're not completely capitulating just yet. And by the way, this is why having the pawn on h4 is so useful, because there is no g4, because we take en passant. If the pawn was on h5, then g4 take, and I lose my knight. Although, you know, maybe I have check here. Okay. I don't know if this does anything, but I have to play a move. I just can't access this diagonal. It's what I need. I can't get back to the position very easily. Hold on. What is that? This doesn't work. I think we might be winning. I can't believe this. Queen d3 was a horrible move. And my opponent had a lot of time to think about it. I'm not even sure what Queen d3 does. Maybe supports b5, because it's difficult to take with either of these pieces because of their alignment. But if b5 now, then you're probably just getting mated somehow. Okay. Aren't you still getting mated? After queen to g3. I think so. I think so. There's no way to avoid mate. And the pawn on h4 is the hero. Wow. Wow. I feel quite bad for my opponent because he played a great game. He put so much pressure on my position. But this is what I was saying before about the necessity to generate counterplay. Like, we have to generate counterplay because if we don't, we're going to get stomped on, right? If we just curl up in a ball, we're going to lose. And it's something I've noticed with really strong players, like Masters particularly, is that when I'm playing against them in like Blitz or something, and I know I've got a winning position, they'll often just throw caution to the wind a bit, give me some material in order to generate some kind of even very dubious counterplay, but any kind of counterplay, just to try to squirm out. And I think that's a major, major skill in itself. And yeah, this is just a forced mate. There's no way to stop rook e1. There's no way. And the White King is suffocated. So yeah, we can pre-move it. I didn't pre-move it before because he could have played king to h1. And then taking on g3 wouldn't have been a pre-move, but yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. That was such an interesting game. Let's jump into the analysis. I think we I haven't got the evaluation on right now, but if I had to guess where we went wrong, I think what we should have done in this position is taken, and after knight takes, then continue with a move like a6, so that our structure remains intact. I think that was probably the way to go. And in this position, again, I think we should have played take, and then a move like knight to d6. And I think we would have been in a much better position. But, you know, we can always say these things in retrospect. We can always say in retrospect, oh, having the pawn come to c6 was very, very bad. But you got to see it during the game. And you make mistakes during the game, inevitably. And you got to try and find a way out of them. But yeah, super interesting. Let's see what the engine has to say. Okay, so it seems like we had a really successful opening, which I kind of assumed was the case. But 79.1% accuracy for my opponent, 83.3% for us. Let's see what the engine has to say. So, the Caro Kann, the exchange variation, bishop d3, knight c6, pawn c3, and queen to c7. Which, as I said, I learned from Alex Banzea, who I assume learned it from Grandmaster David Howell. You may be asking, why did white play pawn h3? Why not just develop the knight? Well, then bishop g4, and then we get everything we want. We get the bishop outside the pawn chain, we play e6, locking the pawn chain shut, we develop very easily, and we have a great game. So h3 is made to stop the bishop developing to either of the squares it would love to go to, and prepare to develop the knight. I believe I'm right in saying there's an interesting line here, where after pawn f3, bishop d7 is the move. Yeah, I am correct in saying that. And then after something like castles, the engine really likes e5, actually. But you could probably just go e6 as well. Either is probably fine. We can probably castle queenside in a lot of cases, actually. But we go g6 after h3, knight to e2, bishop f5, and the whole point is that white probably should take. Something like take, castles, e6, and the whole point of this setup is to whack a knight on e4. That's literally the whole point, basically. Bishop d6, rook g8, castle queenside maybe, all very nice stuff. Very interesting. But knight to f4 played by my opponent, which surprised me. I was expecting bishop to f4. And after, like, queen to d7, let's say castles, let's say bishop to d3, queen d3, e6, knight d2, knight f6. I thought this would be an interesting position. But yeah, he goes knight to f4. I went bishop d3. The engine hates bishop d3. It really wants knight f6, defending like this. Again, inviting this trade because of e6, knight to e4, and we'll be very happy. So bishop d3 is not the best move. Interestingly, knight takes is the better option, which I kind of like was thinking it would be interesting to prepare bishop to f4. The engine here wants bishop to h6 to stop that. But let's say we go e6, bishop f4, bishop to d6. This was more so what I was thinking of playing, and I thought this would lead to an interesting game, and we're perfectly fine in this position. The queen d3, pawn e6, castles, bishop d6. Queen e3, again, was an odd move because knight f5 will now come with tempo. The engine does prefer knight f6. I thought coming to e4 was a bit silly, though. I suppose knight d2 can't be played because your knight hangs. So let's say knight back to d3. Oh, okay, the engine wants rook g8. I'm never going to play that. Does he just want to go g5, g4? Surely not. Surely not. Let's say you just develop. Yeah, he wants g5, g4. That's hilarious. And then we just castle queenside, I guess. Yeah, that's very interesting. Queen e3, though. I went knight g to e7, knight to d3, knight to f5, queen to e2, pawn to h5. Pawn h5 is kind of always a good move in these positions, because if g4, hg4, if hg4, I mean, do you really want to do this? And if queen g4, do you really want to do this? It just looks horrible. And then there are actually tactics of taking on d4. I told you it was an idea. Told you it was an idea. And here the engine loves it. And wants rook d4. And if you move the knight, where'd you even put it, actually? That's a good point. Go to e1, the bishop hangs. The knight has no moves. And if you defend it, queen c2. And if you defend it, then you just lose. Because the queen, it goes to like e3, then I take this. Well, bishop g5 played, best move. Here I played h4, which is inaccurate. I should be going bishop e7. I rejected this on the basis of bishop f4. And I thought bishop d6, and it's like, well, why am I offering him a draw? I don't want to offer him a draw, that sounds silly. Because this is a draw offer, effectively, right? But apparently, if bishop f4, I can just go queen to b6. I guess, and I'm fine. The engine here wants bishop to h2. And then g5. That's so funny. g5, wow. Okay, well, I went h4. Knight d2. And h4 isn't the best. I need to be trying to get rid of the bishop. If I try to do it now, then the knight can come to f3 to support the bishop. Right, whereas if I do it immediately, there's no knight to f3. And if the queen supports the bishop, then f6, bishop f4, queen d7. Oh, now there's no knight d2 as well, and then g5, g4. This is like London-esque. Very reminiscent of like Jabava, if I am remembering that correctly. But okay, knight d2, rook h5, knight f3. White is better. King f8 is the best move. Very happy to have seen that. Bishop f6, bishop e7 is good. Take, take. Knight d to e5, and I have to take this. I have to take this. And let's say knight takes, rook c8, or queen g7, and I'm fine. Rook fe1, rook c8, let's say rook a d1, knight d6, and we go for the same plan. The problem is, I played a6, which allows knight takes. My opponent didn't play it, though. He played rook fe1, and again, I must take him, but I don't. And then we get this structure, which was not good. Not good, because it makes our play very difficult with these pawns being so weak. Whereas if I had taken him and played a move like rook c8, these pawns are very strong. And there's no significant counterplay. The position's completely equal. But yeah, lesson learned. Knight e5, queen e8, queen g4, knight f5. Knight e4 is the best move. I couldn't figure out what we're doing after knight to f3. Engine wants knight g3, allowing knight g6, fg6, rook e6, queen f7, and if rook g6, our only good move is rook e8, and apparently we're okay. I didn't want to play this. I thought this was terrifying. I went knight f5. Here, the engine wants a4 or b4. Okay. My opponent went rook e2, which I thought was very valid. King g7 is the best move. Rook a to e1, rook h6. Engine wants the immediate rook to a7. It's not really concerned about this. It doesn't think that white has enough play. After rook c6, we have to find knight h6, kicking the queen. And if queen c8, rook g5, and I generate my own counterplay. Apparently. Rook h6, though, a bit timid. Again, I should probably try to create counterplay. Knight d3. The engine wants rook c1, going for c4, I guess? It really wants c4. But I guess it's hard to leave this d-pawn vulnerable. It's defending for the time being, but it is vulnerable. So knight d3, I thought was a valid option. a5 is actually the best move. That must have looked really weird to you guys when I played a5. But I just didn't want it to be a target, so I thought it made sense. Knight c5, rook a7, rook e5. Here a4 is equalizing. I thought that was ridiculous because now the knight sees it. Wait, can't you... Oh, comes a tempo on the queen, of course. If this, then this. Oh, yeah, of course. I completely missed that. Okay. Well, I went rook e7. a3. Queen d8. Queen e2. Queen e2 I thought was a good move, trying to come over here. The engine wants rook h8, allowing the infiltration, and then playing queen b8, so if you take, I take. And I think that's very good for us. Yeah, okay. I didn't want to allow the infiltration, so I went queen b6. I figured this trade should be very good for us if we play take-take. We can also take on b2, but I would have traded the queens. Because then these rooks are doing nothing. They're kind of silly now, because there's no queen to attack with. So, rook a7, let's say knight c5, rook h8, bring the rook over probably, and we're fine. We're fine. Queen b6, b4, best move actually. Take. I was expecting c takes, and if knight takes, I'm completely lost after queen to b2. So I couldn't play that anyway. And I thought this was terrifying. I didn't see queen b2. I don't know if I would have taken, though, because, you know, this diagonal was very, very weak then. But I thought this was what white was going for, opening up the c-file against my c-pawn as well. ab4 surprised me. Queen b5, inaccurate. Queen d2 is the best move. My opponent went queen g4, slightly inaccurate, allowing queen c4, which I should have played immediately. And we're apparently equal, forcing queen f3 to defend. And then the game goes on. I got a little bit scared of my knight, so I went rook to h5. Because here, again, I completely forgot the fact the queen was hanging at the end of the line. Completely forgot. So I went rook h5. And here, white can play knight e6. And after fe6, rook e6, I was pretty damn scared. I don't know. I saw rook to h6 trying to defend. Queen g5 is the best move, and I'm just going to get slaughtered. My opponent missed it, thankfully. He went queen f3. Queen c4. Rook a7 is slightly stronger. That does make sense. And if you go for the sacrifice, I'm okay, apparently. So I guess we don't have the immediate pressure on g6. I can try and bring my queen to f7 to defend. But queen c4 is what I chose. Rook a1 is the best move. Rook g5 is a mistake. I couldn't figure out what to play. I had no time. Rook h8 is the best move, stopping the infiltration on the back rank. If rook a6. Queen b5 defending. And the game goes on, and I'm okay. But rook g5, it was a panic move. I have no time. King h2 is a miss. Rook a6 is the best, which I, again, was expecting. Rook a6, queen b5. And queen f4 is very strong. Also, rook a8 is strong. My rook just does nothing on g5. And it's actually best to put it back on h5, which I did which was kind of a panicky move, but like it is actually the best move. Rook a6, queen. I went rook c7. Yeah. I need to play queen b5 here. Rook c7 is a big mistake. After queen b5, engine wants g3 or g4. I doubt my opponent would have played that. The third best move is rook e1, and I can survive after rook to h8. I went rook c7, and I completely forgot about this. So here I shouldn't have taken, but I figured it gave me the biggest chance for counterplay because I saw rook h7, and here you have to find knight d5 check or knight to e8 check because my c-pawn is pinned. That's the point. And if knight e8 check, my king is just running out of squares. But my opponent played rook a7, which is what I'd calculated. And here the only move is rook e7, which I played. Slightly lucky, I've got to say. Slightly lucky. But it makes sense. Put the rook on the open file. Make sure that it's not undefended. Because if I play a silly move, like, I don't know, g5, then knight e8 check, and you pick up my rook. And if I go to g6, you still pick it up, and I lose the knight. But you get my point. I went rook e7. And here, the game is dead equal. Dead equal. I thought my opponent would go for b5, which is the best move. I was calculating c5, and this completely loses. Was I really calculating c5? I think I was. That also allows rook a6. I'm completely lost there. The only moves to survive are queen f1 or rook e1. What's the point? I thought that b6 would be played. Here, I'm just mating. So after knight e8, you just have to give it up. You have to give it up. Wow. But my opponent went rook b7. I went queen a2, a mistake. Here, I have to go rook e1, or queen f1, or king f7. I guess so that the knight can't move with check. I went queen a2. Here, b5 is the only move that isn't zeros. I don't know what I would have played here. I don't know. Maybe queen a5, hitting the knight. And here, bc6, rook c7. Okay, queen f4 is the only move. I'm not sure this is completely intuitive. But, I mean, my opponent has the time to figure this out. There's not really a good excuse for him not spending more time. Because queen d3 completely loses the game after queen f2. Completely losing. My opponent went queen f3. Even if I exchange, I'm still much, much better after king g5, though. That's the only move. I don't know if I would find that. Rook e2 is obviously the immediate natural move, and this is okay for white. But queen g3 check forces mate. Queen g3, hg3, and yeah, the king moves to the back rank, and then you get mated. So my opponent resigns, and yeah, we wriggle our way out of a very difficult game. Key lesson from this game for me is, firstly, in the opening, if there's tension between the bishops, keep the tension. Allow white to take. Allow white to take. That's the first takeaway. Second takeaway for me is, in these Carlsbad structures, which is what this pawn structure is known as, it's a Carlsbad structure, do not allow b takes c6 unless we have an immediate plan to go c5, I think. Do not allow that. That's silly. Just do not do it. If the knight goes to e5, take it. Those are my two big takeaways. And also create counterplay. Create counterplay. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see another very interesting game in the Caro Kann, where, again, I actually played this Alex Banzea system with g6 and bishop to f5. I think in that game, my opponent went knight f3, then we had bishop to f5, and we had a very interesting game. Video will be linked up there. Check it out. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, check out the playlist down there. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in one of those videos.